discussing the Birds and the Birds, right? Eagles and Ravens this Sunday in Baltimore. But before we get to that, we'll welcome in Josh Paunil from PhillyMag.com, Birds 24/7. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you?
Well, I've been waiting to ask you this question for 3 or 4 days. How are your pants? And please tell us what happened.
So I was going on Philly Sports Talk, I believe it was Tuesday, and so right before they wanted to do Facebook Live to promote it, and they asked me to long snap because obviously the Eagles were in quite the pickle on Sunday with John Dornbos and then Brent Selleck getting injured. So I get ready to do the long snapping, and Michael Barkan is videotaping this from behind me.
With his phone, right?
Yeah, with his phone on Facebook Live. And I feel my jacket, getting a little tight as I'm bending over. So I'm like, all right, well, I don't want to rip my jacket. So let's take that off, put that to the side. And I pat myself on the back for being so forward thinking. And then I bend down, do the long snap, and my pants rip. and Michael Barkan zooms in on me as that happens. And I get up and I'm like, all right, well, I don't know how the long snapping went, but that was not what I was intending to happen. And then so they closed Philly Sports Talk with that video from Facebook Live. And then when I was on Breakfast on Broad Wednesday morning, they had my man Barrett Brooks do a
breakdown,
film breakdown of it. And it was, and then my grandma and my sister, my mother, they're all very. I don't know what the right word was, but they all didn't mind laughing at my expense on that one. But I'll be able to get them sewed up this weekend. I should be good to go. But in the end, I was just trying to make Brent Selleck feel better. His snap didn't go very well on Sunday. I just wanted to show him that, it could be worse.
What's the phrase? Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you, and God bless you, you split your pants right down the backside. But I applaud the attempt, Josh Paunil, and I applaud the fact that you're allowing yourself to both literally and figuratively be the butt of the joke. All right, well, now that we got the hard-hitting questions out of the way, I guess we could talk a little bit about what's taking place at the NovaCare complex this week, including the revelation from Brandon Brooks about an anxiety condition. He was very forthright and very candid when he spoke in his locker the other day. And, it's funny because Scott and I were on the radio together going through Doug's press conference, and we were kind of joking about, like, good Lord, what is this, like an inquiry, like the Inquisition? They were really trying to get to the bottom of in that press conference of what was taking place with Brandon Brooks. And, of course, Doug wasn't going to reveal any information. And then yet, I know you guys all went and stood in front of Brandon Brooks, and he basically let it all out of the bag. What's the latest on him, and what was your whole take on the Brandon Brooks situation?
Yeah, well, I mean, the headline out of it is that he doesn't expect it to affect him going forward. He says he has an anxiety condition where I guess he has this obsession with being perfect, and when he makes a mistake, it kind of weighs on him too much. And so he said that he has 2 types of medicine. He has one that he just started taking recently that's supposed to be more of a long-term solution that kind of builds up in your system, and in his words, kind of calms you down a little bit and chills you out a bit. And then the second type of medication was more like a short-term fix. So he says that he doesn't expect this to affect him going forward, which obviously was a big concern just 2 days ago because he missed 2 of the last 3 games. When he was with the Texans, he missed a game in each of the last 2 seasons because of this. And so I think it was simultaneously he was a bit concerned that he had this condition, but it was also relief that at least now he knows why and he can address it. But then also my initial takeaway was I just admired how open he was about this, because a lot of people wouldn't talk about if they have some type of anxiety condition or something else like that. Brandon Brooks just stood in front of more than a dozen cameras, probably 20 to 25 media members, answered all of our questions, was happy to talk about everything. And so, but yeah, the big headline, he doesn't expect this to affect him going forward. But obviously we won't know for sure until, this pops up again. Hopefully not.
Real quick before we leave, just that issue of the anxiety and those type things, does it say anything to you that we've had a receiver who says that he can't get his mind right, and then now we have an offensive lineman who says he's having issues? What does that illustrate to you?
I think what it illustrates is just that players feel more comfortable speaking about these things. I was really struck after that whole Nelson Aguilar week of when he talked about that he got benched. I was talking to a former NFL player who was in the league for about a decade, and the one word he used to describe what Nelson Aguilar was talking about was refreshing, because he said that a lot more guys than you would think feel that way, but they just don't feel comfortable, telling the public or telling the media because, they don't want to be ridiculed for it. And there's, the whole perception of, well, I don't want people to think, I'm not macho or whatever. So really what it illustrates to me is that people are more willing to talk about it openly, because this affects guys a lot more than people would think. It's just that now society and culture is, more, accepting, and they're not just going to ridicule people for these things that affect a lot of people.
Josh, Scott Grayson here, wanted to ask you about, obviously this wide receiver core is not something that you can hang your hat on and feel confident in and week out. When you look at what happened yesterday with Michael Floyd being released by the Cardinals, it's been almost 24 hours. Would you be more surprised if the Eagles put a waiver claim in for him or if they did not?
That's a good question. I'm kind of 50-50 on it, because I think Howie Roseman has showed that he's not – I don't want to say they care, but I don't want to say he doesn't care about potential off-the-field issues, but they're a lot more accepting of it than they were in the past few years with who they drafted, who they brought in, the free agency. There was this yesterday the NFL released how many arrests there have been this year, and the Eagles had 10% of them, with Nigel Bradham having 2 and Josh Huff when he was here having 1. And so, obviously they need a receiver, but given the money that they're going to have to pay the guy for, 3 games, or really 2 games, because it's not like he's going to do much for you this week. And then even next week, on a short week, how much is he going to give you? So I guess I understand the viewpoint of, okay, we'll get a little bit of an expanded portrait of him, see him in practice. When you can get a better sense of if you'll want to bring him in, potentially via free agency in the offseason. So honestly, I guess I'm really 50-50 on it. I guess I would be a little bit more surprised if they get him than if they don't get him, but either way, I don't think either would shock me.
What I guess in your opinion, what would Michael Floyd bring to this team if the Eagles did get him? Does it send a message to the other receivers more than anything else?
Honestly, I think what it does is it just brings in a little bit more talent. I guess I understand where you're coming from with does it send a message, but I feel like the Eagles receivers are very clear on the fact that the front office does not think they're adequate. It's not, even after the Eagles traded for Dorial Green-Beckham back in, I guess it was August now, even before they did that, or right after they did that, they traded for him, and they put in a waiver claim for, I can't remember his name now, I think it might be Rasheed Bailey, but a receiver that didn't make the team last year. They put in a waiver claim for him to try to get him on the team this year. And so I think the team has been loud and clear with how they've operated, and even Doug Peterson using a bunch of 3 tight end sets, and barely using Bryce Treggs recently, Paul Turner not getting that many snaps. So I think what it would do is it would give the Eagles a better idea if they want to sign this guy potentially as a free agent in the offseason more than anything else.
Josh Paunil with us, Birds 24/7, PhillyMag.com. And Josh, I know when we talk to different beat reporters from the Eagles and guys that are up in the locker room on a daily basis, such as yourself, they say that if Jordan Matthews played like he talked each week, that he'd be All-Pro and Pro Bowl every year and, on the number 1 of everybody's list. He spoke today about Carson Wentz and said that he's perfect for Philadelphia, talking about the quarterback's workload. Do you agree with Jordan Matthews' assessment of Carson Wentz, and how do you think Carson is playing at this point of the season?
Absolutely, and I think that's one thing that the Eagles actually tried out, was they wanted to see, or one part of their evaluation during the offseason was when they brought in each of these quarterbacks, it wasn't just, let's get him on the chalkboard, let's see how smart he is football-wise, Let's see what his arm strength is like, or what his athleticism is. It's, can he handle the media? Can he handle the public ridicule he'll face at some point? Because obviously, even if you're a great quarterback, you're going to have some down games. So it was, when the Eagles brought Carson Wentz in, it wasn't just, okay, we love this guy's arm strength, we love his mobility, but they also really liked his intangibles, his leadership, how he kind of always stayed even-keeled. He didn't get too high after a win or too low after a loss, and they thought he could really handle this city and really be that kind of blue-collar guy. Not that just would be good for the team, but, they obviously, it wasn't an important part, but they were happy that they thought fans would like him too because of how hard of a worker he is and the type of guy he is. Now, as for his performance, it wasn't that hard to see why Doug Peterson said after the game on Sunday why he thought it was Carson's best game of the year. And this is a guy that was playing behind, even saying a makeshift offensive line isn't giving it its justice. I mean, your fourth string right tackle, your backup rookie right guard, your backup left guard, and he got hit 10 times, sacked 4 times, but he was still able to navigate the pocket well. There was one play in particular that stood out to me. It was, I can't remember the down or the distance, but it was in the second half, and there was pressure right behind him, and he ducked at the exact right time. And that's the type of thing that you can't really teach. It's just having a pocket presence about you and being able to elude that pressure and then, getting out of the pocket. So you saw the natural abilities that he has with the pocket presence, and he had a lot of subtle pocket movements, moving around the pocket, a step here, a step there to get himself in a better position or give him, a better angle or to fit the ball into a tight window. And honestly, I thought one of his best throws didn't even show up in the box score because that dime that he threw to Jordan Matthews in the corner of the end zone when Matthews couldn't get his right foot in, that was pinpoint accuracy and great touch at its finest. So, you saw him make some impressive plays. You saw that natural ability he has. And although the stats haven't been great, I do think there's a lot of room for optimism going forward for him.
Josh Paunil with us, PhillyMag.com. Now, I was in section 136, not the press box, Josh, so that Jordan Matthews didn't get his toe down. That happened about, 30 feet away from me. And then the Zach Ertz interception also happened right near me. So, of course, Doug says it was Carson's best game. Well, my grade might have been a little lower because all these things were happening very, very close to me as, quite frankly, the people in my section wanted the Eagles to score. So one thing I know people were shouting at the game was why weren't they running the ball, but they had an issue when they only had one running back, right?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I do think that there are a couple of previous games where you could, criticize Doug about the run-pass disparity. But if you look at this game, I didn't have a problem with the play calling at all. They had almost 400 total yards with little talent on offense that had several injuries. And so the problem was not moving the ball at all. The problem was that they made 4 trips into the red zone, and they came away with 1 touchdown and 2 turnovers. I mean, that's really what cost them the game on offense. And it wasn't like, they turned the ball over because of play calling either, obviously. The first turnover, that's actually something that I thought was interesting. It did not look like a good throw or a good decision by Carson Wentz. But Doug Peterson also, when we asked him about it on Monday, he actually didn't even mention Carson. He talked about Zach Ertz. And Doug said, I need to communicate to Zach that he needs to get across the defender's face, because it looked like Ertz was expecting a back shoulder throw on the slant pass, but that obviously wasn't what Carson Wentz or even Doug Peterson seemed to want to happen. So the turnovers were the big story, not the how much they ran the ball, because they moved the ball fine. They just weren't able to convert on those red zone attempts. When you're 25% touchdown ratio in the red zone, that's pretty bad, and you're not going to win many games with that.
Josh, let me ask you about Darren Sproles. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. I mean, that was obviously a vicious hit that he took on that play that knocked him out of the game and put him in the concussion protocol. He's not a young guy, even though every time he goes out there he finds the fountain of youth. Is this the kind of hit that could knock – I mean, do you think we'll see him again this season and beyond that, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we'll see him beyond that. As of this season, I mean – I would imagine so, because he's going through the concussion protocol this week. So It's not clear if he'll play this week. It seems like he probably won't, depending on what his status is. Today and tomorrow, we'll get a better picture of whether he'll play on Sunday when we talk to Doug tomorrow morning. But I imagine you'll see him at some point this year. I don't think a concussion will take him out for 3 or 4 weeks. And then I definitely think you'll see him back next year. I mean, he's the type of guy that even after sustaining a concussion after a big hit like that, he's just a guy that he loves the game of football. And I think that, he talked about how after he signed that contract extension back some point in the offseason, maybe July or August, that, he wanted to play out the 2-year contract extension, which would mean he would be an Eagle through next year, through 2017. And I would be very surprised if you don't see him next year or even at the end of this year at some point.
Let's switch sides now and talk a little bit about the defense, Josh. And I'd be curious to hear where you're at on this. The defense is clearly not playing to the level that everybody kind of thought it would play at, especially after the way the first few games went. Where do you put the blame on that? On the players or on Jim Schwartz?
That's a good question. I mean, I definitely would put a good chunk of it on the players. I mean, I think one thing that we didn't realize at the time when the Eagles defense was having so much success was how Jim Schwartz was able to mask the deficiency he had at cornerback. And I think that's something that teams have been able to pick up on, is how to take advantage of the Eagles cornerbacks, because they don't have much talent there. Nolan Carroll hasn't been playing well lately. Leotis McKelvin obviously hasn't been playing well lately. And, even though Jalen Mills will have some good snaps, he's still a rookie that, to be honest, doesn't have much speed, and it can be easy sometimes for opponents just to run away from him. So I think a lot of it's just the deficiency at cornerback, and then in combination with that, you're not getting enough from the guys that you're paying the big bucks. Fletcher Cox, I think the criticism of him is a little bit over the top. He's not playing up to his $100 million deal, but he's still playing well. But regardless, you're not paying him to play well. You're paying him to play great. But really, one place that I look at is that right defensive end spot, because you have Fletcher Cox playing well. You have Brandon Graham playing at a Pro Bowl level. But on the other side, Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox get a lot of attention. Fletcher Cox gets double teamed oftentimes on the majority of passing downs. So you have Connor Baldwin on the other side who gets all these one-on-ones but hasn't been doing anything with them. So it's the cornerbacks, obviously the defensive line not getting enough pressure in a short enough amount of time is part of it. And then at the end of the day, you still have to give Jim Schwartz some of the blame. It's his unit. He oversees it. He talked about how he could have given Nolan Carroll some more help when he gave up that touchdown pass to Pierre Garçon. And then also the Deshaun Jackson 80-yard touchdown pass. He said that, maybe I could have done something differently there. So it's, fair to give Jim Schwartz some blame because it's his unit. But the players, obviously, the lack of quality you're seeing from your cornerbacks has really hurt them.
Josh Paunil is with us, PhillyMag.com, Birds 24/7. And since you mentioned Jim Schwartz, Josh, I want to ask you this. Jim Schwartz, after 3 games, Eagles fans and commentators and pundits alike were thinking, well, geez, Jim Schwartz is going to leave for another. He's going to get a head coaching job somewhere because this defense is playing outstanding. How has he changed, if he's changed at all, as the team has gone southward, and including even the fact that, he moved his day from Thursdays to Tuesdays and things like that? How have you seen Jim Schwartz change from, say, game 1 to now?
Well, I mean, I guess to be honest with you, I haven't seen him change that much, really. I mean, you see some variation in his scheming and just from week to week, whether he's going to do more zone or man or more blitzes or more just plain off. But you don't really see a change in mentality. And I guess you could look at it 2 ways. A, you're no matter who your coach is, you don't want them to get away from their bread and butter and what they do. You don't want them to panic when things aren't going their way. But then obviously you want them to fix the problems that they're having. And the Eagles have lost 4 straight games now, and it's clear that what they're doing on defense is not good enough. Even though their offense could obviously give them more and needs to do more, that's not the Eagles' recipe for success. The defense has to play well in order for them to win games. So there really hasn't been that much change that you've seen from Jim Schwartz. other than, I guess, maybe the outside protection of him. As you mentioned, after 3 games, I think people were willing to throw him a parade, but now I don't think they'll be too happy to see him on the street.
Josh Paunil's with us from PhillyMag.com, Birds 24/7. Well, we'll talk a little bit about the Eagles and the Ravens this Sunday at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. That's a 1 o'clock start. I asked Jimmy Kemsky earlier, Josh, what's the Eagles' path to victory? And I could hear the pause, and I said, if there is a path to victory, is there a way the Eagles can win this game? And if so, how?
I mean, there's certainly a path. I mean, the one break that the Eagles are catching is, we talked about the run-pass disparity. I think it's even going to be greater this week. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Carson Wentz threw the ball 50 times this Sunday, because the Ravens have the number 1 rush defense in the NFL. And in terms of the pass defense, the numbers aren't horrible, but their top cornerback, Jimmy Smith, is going to be out this week. And when the Ravens pass defense hasn't had Jimmy Smith, it's been a pretty bad pass defense. So I think you're going to see the Eagles throwing the ball a lot because they're probably not going to have any success running the ball. And so that's going to be what they need to do, is be able to move the ball through the air. But then obviously the problem is they don't have a lot of talent at receiver to take advantage of that Ravens deficiency. So, I don't know, maybe you'll see, Zach Ertz or Jordan Matthews on the inside have a big game. Jimmy Smith, that's one thing he brought, is, he matched up better against the bigger wide receivers like a Jordan Matthews than the other Ravens cornerbacks. So, it's going to have to be kind of the recipe for success Malcolm Jenkins laid out for the team, way back, a month or 2 ago, was the defense has to hold them to, a pretty low-scoring game, probably in the teens somewhere. Special teams maybe give you a big play, and the offense just at least get field goals. Move the ball, get field goals, punt the ball, don't turn it over. So they definitely have a path, but it's kind of like the Bengals game. It's not the Bengals are not 18 points better than the Eagles, but if you don't show up ready to play, then it could get ugly pretty quickly.
Josh Paunil from PhillyMag.com and Birds 24/7. So, Josh, we'll close by asking you this: was there anything that came out of the locker room today that made you go, oh, or kind of raised your eyebrow a little bit, or is it kind of business as usual at the NovaCare complex?
Well, I mean, the locker room was actually pretty quiet today. The one thing that I thought was interesting was their new long snapper, Lovato. He's from New Jersey. And just, recently he was, practicing long snapping with his father out of, he wasn't working. He didn't have an NFL job, obviously. He was practicing long snapping with his dad in New Jersey, working at his family's sandwich shop in New Jersey. And he was just talking about how, his specialties are breakfast sandwiches and hoagies. So, there really wasn't much happening in the Eagles locker room today. But the one thing I learned was that their new long snapper could apparently make a pretty good hoagie.
Well, you got to call it a hoagie, not a sub, right? You call it a sub, you're going to get in trouble. I did that. I posted a picture down here since I now primarily live in Jersey, and all my Philadelphia and Pennsylvania friends were like, what are you calling a hoagie a sub for? What are you doing?
That's an adjustment I've had to make, too. I'm from Maryland, and Maryland, or at least from where I'm from in Maryland, we all use the term sub, and so that was one of the things I had to pick up pretty quick on, too. Philadelphians, they have their the vernacular that they would like you to use.
Yes, and you better get on board. I mean, that's not as good as, split pants, but, I mean, yes, I get yelled at, too. Josh Paunil from PhillyMag.com, Birds 24/7. Check him out at Josh Paunil on Twitter and find out all 22, what he does each week with us. Josh, we thank you so much for being on with us each week, and we'll catch up with you again real soon, pal.
Thanks for having me, guys.